When I walked out of the office that Friday evening, a thin envelope in my hand, the world felt like it had shifted beneath my feet. 10 years in that company, 10 years of loyalty, skipped lunches and late nights, all gone with 6 words. We're letting you go effective immediately. I stood there in the parking lot, the winter wind biting my face, staring at the gray clouds rolling above the city skyline. Around me, cars came and went, people heading home to their families, their plans, their lives. Mine had just evaporated. When I got home, I didn't even make it past the doorway before Laura looked up from her phone and frowned. "You're home early. What happened?" I tried to sound calm, but the words came out broken. "They laid me off. The company's downsizing." She blinked slowly, then sighed as if I'd just told her the dinner would be late. "You're kidding." "I wish I was," I said. "But it's done. I'll find something else. Just need a little time." Laura stood, crossed her arms, and stared at me for a long moment. "Time," she said quietly. "You always need time. What are we supposed to live on while you figure things out?" Her words stung more than I expected. I'd always been the one holding things together, the one who paid the bills, kept the lights on, worked through sickness and exhaustion just to make sure she never had to worry. "I have some savings," I said. "We'll be okay for a while." She didn't answer, just turned away and went back to scrolling her phone. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock. Every sound felt louder now that the silence between us had grown so heavy. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and started searching for jobs. Dozens of applications, endless cover letters, polite rejections. "We regret to inform you," became the soundtrack of my days. Laura stopped asking how the search was going. She stopped asking much of anything. By the 3rd week, she was leaving the house early, dressed better than usual, her perfume lingering in the hallway long after she left. "Where are you going?" I asked one morning. "Out," she said curtly. "You're not the only one with things to do." I tried to smile, but my chest ached. "Maybe we could talk tonight. We'll get through this together." She didn't look at me. "You keep saying we," she said softly. "But I don't remember the last time we felt like one." And then she was gone. The days blurred after that. My savings dwindled, bills piled up, and the house grew quieter with every passing hour. The only sound that remained constant was the creak of the old wooden floor and the occasional ring of my phone. Another rejection, another door closing. Then, one night, I came home from a disappointing interview to find Laura sitting on the couch with her suitcase open beside her. My heart sank. "What's this?" She didn't meet my eyes. "I can't do this anymore, David. I need stability. You can't even promise when things will get better." I stepped closer, voice shaking. "Laura, please, this is temporary. I just need—" She cut me off sharply. "You just need time, right? You've said that before." She zipped her bag, stood, and finally looked at me. There was no anger in her eyes, just cold detachment. "I already talked to my mother. I'll be staying there for a while." I stared at her, searching for a hint of the woman I'd loved for 20 years, but all I saw was a stranger. "So you're leaving me," I said quietly. "Because I lost my job." Her lips tightened. "Because you lost yourself long before that." And then she walked out. No hug, no goodbye, just the sound of the door clicking shut. For days, I couldn't move. I'd sit on the couch, staring at the empty space where her shoes used to be, where her laughter once filled the air. The silence felt heavier than grief. I sold my car, then most of my furniture, just to keep the lights on. Eventually, I stopped answering calls. Friends offered sympathy, but I couldn't bear the pity in their voices. Then, one afternoon, when the rain was coming down in steady sheets, I found myself walking aimlessly through the streets, my shoes soaked through, my jacket clinging to my skin. I must have looked like a ghost wandering the city. That's when I heard a voice behind me, rough, familiar, and years older. "David, is that you?" I turned and blinked through the rain. It was Mr. Harris, my old high school teacher, the man who used to give extra lessons after school to kids like me who had no one else to believe in them. "Mr. Harris," I said, managing a weak smile. "Didn't expect to see you still around." He looked me up and down, frowning. "You look like you've been through hell, son. Come inside, get dry." I followed him to a small diner nearby. He ordered us coffee and let me sit in silence until I finally told him everything. The job, Laura, the mess I'd made of my life. When I finished, he leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "You know," he said slowly, "sometimes God takes everything from a man to remind him what he truly has." I laughed bitterly. "And what's that? Nothing?" He smiled faintly. "A mind, a heart, and time to rebuild. You're still breathing, aren't you? Then you're not done." Something about his calm certainty settled inside me like a spark in the dark. I didn't believe him, not yet, but I wanted to. As we left the diner, he handed me his card. "Come by tomorrow," he said. "I might have something for you." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming. When morning came, I showed up at the address on the card, a rundown workshop on the edge of town. Inside, shelves lined with tools, sawdust on the floor, and the faint smell of varnish in the air. "You said you might have something," I told him. Mr. Harris grinned. "A job. Not much money, but honest work. I run this little carpentry shop for the community center. We fix furniture, build benches for the park. Could use another pair of hands." I hesitated. "I've never done carpentry before." "Then you'll learn," he said simply. "The best lessons don't come with paychecks at first. They come with calloused hands." And so, that's how it began. A broken man, a pile of wood, and an unexpected chance at rebuilding more than furniture. I didn't know it yet, but that dusty little workshop would become the place where I'd find purpose again, and where the woman who once walked away would come crawling back, only to learn what true worth really looks like. The first few days in the workshop were rough. My hands, once used to typing emails and writing reports, blistered from the unfamiliar weight of a hammer. My back ached from standing too long, and I made more mistakes than I could count. But each time I fumbled, Mr. Harris would simply smile and say, "Wood can be reshaped, David. So can a man." He was right. Slowly, I began to find rhythm in the work. There was something healing about the way raw wood transformed under careful hands, the scraping sound of the plane, the grain revealing itself, the faint scent of polish. It was honest labor, and for the first time in a long time, I went home tired but at peace. Weeks passed, and I started noticing the people who came into the shop. Single mothers with broken chairs, retirees with tables that had seen better days, young couples just starting out. We didn't charge much, sometimes nothing at all, but the gratitude in their eyes was payment enough. Mr. Harris ran the place not for profit, but for purpose. "This place gives people back a piece of their dignity," he told me one afternoon, "and that includes you." He had a way of saying things that hit deeper than you expected. Little by little, the noise in my head began to quiet. I wasn't thinking about Laura as much. The bitterness still lingered, but it didn't consume me the way it used to. Until one Saturday morning, I was sanding down a bench when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "David?" The voice was hesitant, fragile, but unmistakable. "Laura," I said slowly. There was a pause, then a shaky breath. "I heard about what you're doing now. The workshop. That teacher of yours posted something on Facebook. You look different." I didn't know what to say. "Different? How?" "Older. Stronger." "I don't know," she murmured. "Listen, I wanted to talk. Maybe we could meet?" A dozen thoughts raced through my mind. The nights I'd spent alone, the emptiness she'd left behind, but also the way I'd changed, not for her, but for myself. "Sure," I said finally. "Coffee tomorrow, the diner on Main." That night, I barely slept. Part of me wanted to see her again, to prove that I wasn't the broken man she'd abandoned. Another part of me feared that old wound might reopen. When she walked into the diner the next morning, I barely recognized her. She looked polished, composed, but tired. The same woman who once couldn't stand my uncertainty now carried her own shadows. "Hi," she said softly, sitting down across from me. "Hi." There was a long silence before she finally spoke. "You look good, David. Healthy." I shrugged. "Work helps." "I can see that." She stirred her coffee but didn't drink it. "I shouldn't have left the way I did. I thought you'd never get back up again." I didn't for a while, I said honestly. But sometimes losing everything shows you who you really are. Her eyes glistened. I made mistakes. Big ones. I was scared. I nodded. We all get scared. Another silence stretched between us. Then she reached across the table, hesitating before her hand brushed mine. Maybe we could start over? I looked at her hand, then at the woman I'd once loved more than life itself. The woman who walked out when I was at my lowest. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Laura, I said quietly, you were a big part of my story, but that chapter's closed. I'm not the same man you left. She froze, her hand withdrawing. So, that's it? I smiled sadly. That's it, she nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. I understand. When she walked out this time, there was no pain, only peace. I finished my coffee, paid the bill, and stepped outside into the morning Sunday. For the first time in years, I felt light. The workshop became my home. Mr. Harris trusted me more and more, teaching me not just how to shape wood, but how to manage the business. Soon, I was handling orders, balancing accounts, and organizing community events. Word spread fast. The ex-manager who'd become a craftsman. Local papers picked up the story, calling it a second chance at purpose. But the real surprise came a few months later. A representative from a construction firm visited, impressed by the furniture we donated to schools and shelters. We're opening a community housing project, she said. We'd like your team to design and build the interiors. Paid work, of course. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. I wanted to tell Mr. Harris first thing, but when I got to the shop, I found him sitting quietly, a half-finished stool beside him. You look troubled, he said with a knowing smile. I just got us a real contract, I said. Big one. We'll finally be able to expand, hire more people. He chuckled softly. Then you'll need to start leading, won't you? What do you mean? He leaned back, eyes shining. This shop was never about me, David. It was about what came after. You're ready. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. I don't know if I can do it alone. He nodded. You said the same thing about life once, but you proved yourself wrong. That night, I sat alone in the workshop, the smell of sawdust filling the air. I looked at the half-finished furniture, each piece a reflection of the time, pain, and hope that had gone into it. I realized something then. Life doesn't fall apart to punish you. It falls apart to rebuild you. The next morning, I found a note from Mr. Harris on the workbench. His handwriting was shaky but clear. You've learned the difference between building for survival and building with purpose. The world needs men who understand both. Keep creating. Harris. He'd retired quietly, leaving the keys behind. I stood there for a long time, holding that note, the morning light slanting through the dusty windows. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. The man who once lost everything now had a chance to give something back, not just to himself, but to others. And that's exactly what I planned to do. Running the workshop on my own was both terrifying and thrilling. The first few weeks, I felt like I was walking a tightrope. Every decision, every order, every mistake weighed on me. But the same quiet determination that had once gotten me through sleepless corporate nights now fueled something different. Creation, not survival. The community started noticing the changes. We renovated the space, added proper storage, and even built a small sign over the door. Second Chance Woodworks. The name wasn't mine. It was inspired by the lives that had crossed through those doors, including my own. Soon, we had volunteers, young men who'd been laid off, single mothers looking for part-time work, even retirees who just wanted to feel useful again. They came in broken, unsure, just like I had, and one by one, they found purpose in shaping something real. I taught them what Mr. Harris had taught me: patience, precision, pride in small things. I didn't talk much about my past, but they could read it in my hands, in the way I treated each project like a story waiting to be told. Months went by. The construction contract we'd signed turned out to be bigger than expected. We built furniture for an entire block of affordable homes. Families who'd once had nothing now had beds, tables, and shelves. Things made with care, not just sold for profit. The local paper ran another story. This time, they called me the man who built his life back, one nail at a time. It should have been a happy moment, but fame has a way of bringing ghosts back to your doorstep. It started with a message request on social media. A simple, hesitant line. "David, I saw the article. Can we talk? Laura?" I stared at it for a long time before replying. "About what?" "I think I made the biggest mistake of my life," she wrote. "Can I come see you?" I didn't answer right away. That night, as I locked up the workshop, I thought about all the nights I'd spent alone, wondering why she left. The pain, the doubt, the rebuilding, all of it had shaped me into someone new. But part of me was curious. What did she want now that I'd found peace without her? The next afternoon, she showed up. I barely recognized her. Her clothes were still neat, her perfume the same, but something had changed. The confidence she used to wear like armor was cracked. "This place is beautiful," she said, running her fingers along the edge of a finished table. "Thank you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I read everything about you," she continued. "The shop, the projects, the people you've helped. I'm proud of you, David." "Funny," I said quietly. "You weren't proud when I needed you most." Her eyes dropped. "I know. I was selfish, scared. I thought you'd drag me down with you. And now?" She hesitated. "Now I see you didn't fall. You rose." There it was, the truth she'd been avoiding. I had risen, but not for her. She took a breath. "I want another chance, David. I've been alone. My mother's gone, my job's falling apart. I need someone who understands me." Her words hung in the air like dust motes in sunlight. For a brief moment, the old ache flared up again. The memories, the love, the warmth of a shared life, all tempting in their familiarity. But then I looked around at the workshop, the laughter of the volunteers in the next room, the half-built shelves, the smell of varnish. This was the life I had rebuilt, the peace I'd earned. I shook my head slowly. "Laura, you're right. I understand you. But I also understand myself now. And I can't go back to being the man you left behind." Her face fell. "So that's it? You won't even consider—" "I did once," I interrupted gently. "Every day, for months. But the man you left died in that house. The one standing here has a purpose. And that purpose doesn't need validation." Tears welled in her eyes. "I really messed up." "Yes," I said softly. "But maybe that's your lesson to learn. Just like I had mine." She nodded slowly, wiping her face. "You've changed so much." "I had to," I said. "Life didn't give me a choice." When she left the workshop that day, I didn't watch her go. I turned back to the wood on my bench and started sanding again. The sound of the grit against the surface was rhythmic, calming, like the steady beat of a heart, finally at peace. Later that evening, one of the volunteers, a young man named Ryan, came up to me. He'd been struggling to find work after being released from prison. "She seemed upset," he said carefully. "Yeah," I replied. "Some people show up when they see your light again, but not all of them deserve to share it." He nodded slowly, as if that hit close to home. "Guess I needed to hear that." "Good," I said, smiling faintly. "Then let's get back to work." The next few months were the busiest of my life. Our contract expanded, and new clients poured in. The workshop became more than just a workspace. It became a sanctuary for people looking to start over. We had single mothers learning to build toys for their kids, retired soldiers crafting benches for memorial parks, and young men like Ryan finding a reason to stay clean. Each one brought a story, and each story became part of something bigger. Sometimes, when I'd close up late at night, I'd stand at the doorway, listening to the quiet hum of the city. I'd think about how life had stripped me down to nothing, just so it could rebuild me into something unshakable. And then I'd think about Laura, not with anger or longing, but with gratitude, because if she hadn't left, I might never have discovered who I was meant to become. I didn't know it yet, but the next twist in my journey was just around the corner, one that would test everything I'd rebuilt, not through loss, but through temptation. The day started like any other. The scent of freshly cut pine filled the air as sunlight streamed through the workshop windows. I was finishing a custom cabinet when a black SUV pulled up outside. Two men in suits stepped out, followed by a woman in her early 40s. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from power, polished, graceful, intimidating. "Are you Mr. David Miller?" she asked, offering her hand. "I am," I said, wiping my palms on a rag before shaking hers. "My name is Claire Thompson," she said. "I represent Thompson Interiors." We're a luxury design firm. We saw your work in the community housing project. It's remarkable." I smiled politely. "Thank you. We do what we can." She walked around, studying the furniture. Her fingers glided across the surfaces with appreciation. "I have a proposal for you," she said finally. "We're launching a new eco-luxury line. I want your workshop to be part of it. We'll pay generously. You'll be working with designers from the city, maybe even featured in a national campaign." For a moment, I was speechless. Me, the man who'd once been tossed aside by his own family, now being offered a partnership with one of the most prestigious design firms in the region? It felt surreal, but I'd learned to be cautious. "Why me?" I asked. Claire smiled. "Because you create from the heart. That's rare in business today. I can see it in your work." I wanted to believe her, but I'd lived long enough to know that not everyone who praises you has pure intentions. Still, the opportunity was tempting. The extra income could expand the workshop, hire more people, help even more lives. After she left, I sat in my office, staring at the contract she'd given me. The words blurred in my vision as memories of my old life flooded back. The corporate handshakes, the promises, the fine print that always hid betrayal. That night, I called Mr. Harris. His voice, though older and weaker now, carried the same steady wisdom it always had. "Son," he said, "you've built something real. Don't let shiny offers make you forget what you built it for." "I know," I replied, "but this could help so many more people. Only if it doesn't cost you your soul," he said softly. "Be careful which doors you walk through. Not all of them lead to better rooms." The next morning, I visited Claire's office. It was elegant, glass walls, modern furniture, and the faint scent of expensive coffee. As she spoke about profit margins and marketing strategies, something in me began to twist. Her words were smooth, practiced, but they lacked something. Sincerity. When she finished, I leaned back and said, "Before I sign anything, I want to meet the people behind this. The team who'll be working with me." She seemed surprised but agreed. Later that week, I met her designers. Young, ambitious, polished, but disconnected. They saw my work as a trend, not a purpose. To them, it wasn't about rebuilding lives. It was about selling the story of redemption, not living it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went down to the workshop, turned on a small lamp, and sat there among the scent of wood and varnish. The walls seemed to whisper back the laughter and sweat of those who'd found hope here. This was sacred ground, built not for profit, but for people. I made my decision before dawn. The next day, Claire returned, expecting a signature. Instead, I handed the contract back. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but this workshop isn't for sale." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "David, you're walking away from something that could make you famous, wealthy." "I already have what I need," I said calmly. "And I won't trade purpose for prestige." For a moment, she looked genuinely surprised, then smiled faintly. "You're the first man who's ever told me no. Maybe that's why I respect you." She left, and I thought that was the end of it. But life, as always, had other plans. A week later, I received a letter from the city. A notice: the property taxes on the workshop had increased threefold due to new zoning regulations. It was almost as if someone had pulled strings to make sure I regretted turning down that deal. Panic gnawed at me, but I didn't break. I gathered the team that night. "We've hit a wall," I said, showing them the notice. "But walls are meant to be built through, or broken." Ryan spoke up first. "We'll fundraise. Sell some of the custom work, maybe host an auction." Others nodded. Even the retirees offered to pitch in. For the first time in a long while, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. We worked day and night. I crafted new designs, Ryan managed online orders, and the community rallied behind us. Local papers ran another story: the workshop that refused to die. Donations poured in, small but steady, from people who believed in what we were doing. Then one evening, as I was closing up, a car pulled up again. I turned, half expecting another problem, but instead, it was Laura. She stepped out holding an envelope. "I heard about what's happening," she said quietly. "I sold my engagement ring. It's not much, but maybe it'll help." For a long time, I didn't say anything. Part of me wanted to refuse. But then I saw her eyes, not filled with pride this time, but genuine remorse. I took the envelope gently. "Thank you," I said. "This doesn't erase the past, but it means something." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to do one thing right." When she left, I looked up at the night sky. For the first time in years, I felt a strange kind of closure, not from revenge or retribution, but from knowing she'd finally understood the weight of her choices. We used her donation to buy more materials, and slowly, the debt began to shrink. It took months of sleepless nights, hard labor, and faith. But we survived, and one day, I received a letter again, this time from the city. It wasn't another tax increase. It was recognition. Second Chance Woodworks is hereby honored for its contribution to community rehabilitation and employment. I stared at the certificate, tears welling in my eyes. From the ashes of my failure, something beautiful had grown, something that even betrayal couldn't destroy. But my journey wasn't over, because just as I thought peace had finally returned, fate was about to test me one final time. The morning of the ceremony arrived with golden sunlight cutting through the workshop windows. Everyone was buzzing with excitement. The city council had sent word that they wanted to present the award in person. For the first time in years, I'd bought a new suit, though the sleeves still carried faint traces of sawdust no matter how much I brushed them off. I didn't mind. Sawdust had become a part of who I was. Ryan and the rest of the crew were setting up chairs outside, stringing lights across the yard. Neighbors dropped by carrying pies and coffee, their faces glowing with pride. The laughter, the noise, the life in the air, it was everything I'd once thought I'd lost. By noon, the mayor arrived with a small entourage. She shook my hand and smiled warmly. "Mr. Miller, your story has inspired thousands. You've proven that resilience can rebuild more than homes. It can rebuild hope." I thanked her, my voice steady even as my heart pounded. The applause that followed felt surreal. Just a few years ago, I was lying on my couch, surrounded by unpaid bills, wondering how everything had fallen apart. Now, I was standing before my community, not as a broken man, but as someone who had turned his pain into purpose. After the speeches, the mayor handed me the framed certificate. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and for a moment, I thought, maybe this was the end of the story. Maybe this was the peace I'd fought for. But then I noticed a familiar figure standing at the edge of the crowd. Claire Thompson. She hadn't come to congratulate me. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of curiosity and calculation. When the crowd began to disperse, she approached quietly. "You really did it," she said softly, "against all odds." "I told you I wasn't for sale," I replied, not unkindly. She smiled faintly. "No, you weren't, and that's why I'm here. We've been reconsidering how we do business. We want to create a partnership, not to own your name, but to expand what you're doing. You'd stay independent. We'd help build more workshops like this across the state." Her tone was different this time, humble, almost respectful. I studied her for a long moment. "What changed your mind?" She looked around at the people still chatting, laughing, hugging. "This," she said simply. "I saw what you built. I realized that real success isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in how many lives you lift with yours." For the first time, I believed her. I didn't give her an answer right away, but something inside me said this was the opportunity Mr. Harris had once warned me about, the kind that could build, not corrupt. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on the workshop steps. The certificate rested beside me, glowing faintly in the moonlight. My hands were calloused, my body tired, but my spirit unbreakable. The phone rang. It was Mr. Harris. "I saw the article, son. You've made me proud." I smiled. "I just followed your advice. Never let the world tell me I'm finished." He chuckled. "Seems it worked. Now go enjoy what you've built. You've earned it." After hanging up, I wandered through the empty workshop. The benches were covered in shavings, the air thick with the scent of oak and varnish. Every dent, every mark told a story, not of perfection, but of persistence. As I reached the back table, I noticed something tucked under a plank of wood. It was a small photo. One Laura must have slipped there during her last visit. In it, we were young, smiling, our faces full of hope. For a moment, I felt the ache of what could have been, but instead of bitterness, a quiet warmth spread through me. I whispered into the silence. Thank you for leaving when you did, because if she hadn't, I might never have met the people who truly stood by me. The next morning, I called Claire. Let's do it, I said simply, but on one condition: every new workshop we build will take in those who need a second chance. Ex-offenders, widows, veterans, anyone who's lost their way. Agreed, she said. That's exactly what we want. And just like that, a new chapter began. Months turned into years. Second Chance Woodworks became more than just a business. It became a movement. Across the state, abandoned warehouses transformed into community workshops. People who'd once been dismissed as hopeless found dignity in creating again. One afternoon, as I visited one of the new centers, I met a young woman sanding a chair. She looked up and smiled shyly. You're Mr. Miller, right? The founder? I suppose I am, I said with a grin. She hesitated, then said, I just wanted to thank you. Before this place, I was living in my car. Now I have a job, a purpose. You saved my life. Her words hit me harder than any award ever could. I walked out into the sunlight, my chest tight with gratitude. I hadn't just rebuilt my life, I'd become a bridge for others to cross their own storms. That evening, I visited Mr. Harris's grave. I brought a wooden plaque I'd carved myself. It read, "For the man who taught me that falling isn't failure, it's how you learn to build again."